The smoke rose from the crashed ship like black ribbons dancing in the dying light. Yura lay among the twisted metal, her body broken in ways she had never imagined possible. Her scales, once bright silver with hints of blue, were now covered in ash and blood. Her wings, the pride of her family line, were shattered at angles that made her sick to look at. She could not move them. She could not move much at all. The war was over. Her side had lost. The Confederation forces had withdrawn 3 days ago, leaving the defeated Dravonians to die slowly among the ruins of their own ships. Yura had commanded this vessel once. She had stood on the bridge with 200 warriors under her command. Now she was alone. The others were dead or scattered across this cursed planet. She thought of her bondmate, Taehyun. He had died in the first wave of attacks, his ship exploding before her eyes. She thought of her daughter, little Nari, only 8 years old. The last time Yura saw her, she was being evacuated with the other children. That was 6 months ago. She did not know if her daughter still lived. She did not know if her homeworld still existed. The humans had weapons that could turn entire planets to glass. Yura closed her eyes and tried to summon fire. It was the most basic ability of her people, the gift that made them called dragon folk by other species. But nothing came. Her inner flame was dying, just like the rest of her. Perhaps that was better. To die here, to join Taehyun in the void, to stop fighting a war that was already lost. The sound of footsteps made her eyes snap open. Someone was walking through the wreckage. A human, probably, coming to finish her off or take whatever remained of value. She tried to move, tried to reach for the blade at her hip, but her body would not obey. Pain shot through her chest like lightning. Holy, there's someone alive here. The voice was male, speaking in human standard tongue with an accent Yura had learned to recognize during the war. He came around a pile of debris and she saw him clearly. A human man not wearing military uniform. He wore simple clothes covered in dirt and old bloodstains. He carried a large pack on his back and had kind eyes that did not match the war-torn world around them. "Stay away from me," Yura managed to say, her voice coming out as a rasp. "I need no mercy from humans." The man stopped, but he did not leave. He studied her with those strange, soft eyes that humans had. "You need medical help. Your wing is, I need to stabilize you or you will die." "Let me die then." "No." The simple word hung in the air between them. Yura stared at him confused. She had killed humans during the war. She had commanded ships that destroyed human vessels. Her people had been the aggressors in this conflict, driven by leaders who promised them glory and expansion. They had lost everything because of their own pride and greed. Why would this human help her? "I am your enemy," she said. "The war is over." He moved closer slowly, his hands visible and empty of weapons. "My name is Minho, I'm a medic. Will you let me help you?" "Why?" Minho knelt beside her, setting down his pack. "Because you are hurt. Because I can help. Because I am tired of watching people die when I can do something about it." He paused, his hands hovering over her injuries. "Because someone told me once that mercy is what separates us from monsters." Yura wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him to leave her to die with dignity. But the pain was too much, and somewhere deep inside, a small part of her wanted to live, wanted to know if Nari still breathed somewhere in this vast universe. She gave a small nod. Minho worked quickly and carefully. His hands were gentle as he examined her wounds, though she could see him wince at the sight of her shattered wings. He pulled supplies from his pack and began to clean the worst of her injuries. When he touched her wing, she hissed in pain. Sorry, he said quickly. "I know it hurts, but if I do not set this properly, it will heal wrong. You might never fly again anyway, but I can at least try to save the structure." Never fly again. The words hit Yura harder than any weapon. For her people, flying was more than movement. It was identity. It was freedom. It was the physical expression of the fire that burned within every Dravonian soul. Without flight, she was nothing. "Just do what you must," she said, turning her face away. The next hour was agony. Minho worked on her wings with a combination of human medical knowledge and careful observation of her anatomy. He asked questions about Dravonian biology, about how her bones connected, about whether certain movements caused more pain. Despite everything, Yura found herself answering. He was trying to help, and his ignorance of her species was honest, not malicious. When he finished with her wings, he moved to her other injuries. Broken ribs, deep cuts, burns from fire and plasma. He worked steadily, using supplies that Yura recognized as military grade. Human military, probably taken from abandoned bases. "You are a salvager," she said. Minho nodded as he wrapped bandages around her torso. Someone has to collect the medical supplies before they rot. Too many people still need them. He glanced at her. I was a combat medic during the war. My unit was. We were on a transport that got hit. I survived. Most of them did not. There was pain in his voice that Yura understood. The pain of being the one left behind. The guilt of survival. I lost my bondmate, she said quietly. And my daughter is missing. My homeworld was destroyed 2 months ago. I have nothing left. Minho stopped working for a moment. I am sorry. No one should lose so much. It is the price of war. We started this conflict. We paid for it. Maybe. Minho secured the last bandage and sat back. But you did not start the war alone. Leaders start wars. Soldiers and civilians pay the price. He pulled out a water container and a ration pack. Here. You need to eat and drink. Yura wanted to refuse, but her body was desperate for sustenance. She drank carefully, then ate the ration bar he offered. It tasted terrible, but it was food. As the sun set, Minho built a small shelter using debris from the ship. He made a fire, not with technology but with old methods, striking metal against stone. Yura watched him work. This strange human who had saved her life for no reason she could understand. Why are you really doing this? She asked when he settled down across the fire from her. Minho stared into the flames. I have a younger sister. Her name is Bora. We got separated during an evacuation 8 months ago. I do not know if she is alive. He looked up at Yura. But I hope that if she is hurt somewhere, scared and alone, that someone is helping her, even if that someone is supposed to be her enemy. Yura felt something crack inside her chest, something that was not broken bone but broken spirit. This human was helping her because of hope, because of the idea that kindness might exist somewhere in this cruel universe, because he refused to let hate be the only thing that remained after war. Thank you, she whispered. Minho smiled, and it was genuine. Get some rest. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next. Yura closed her eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire. For the first time in months, she did not want to die. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she would face it, and she would not face it alone. 2 weeks passed in the ruins of the crashed ship. Yura's body healed slowly, her Dravonian blood working to repair the damage that would have killed a human twice over. But healing was not the same as being whole. Every morning she woke and felt the weight of her broken wings. Every night she dreamed of flying and woke to the reality that she might never leave the ground again. Minho came and went like the tide. He would leave early in the morning to search the surrounding area for supplies, always returning before dark with whatever he could find. Medical equipment, food rations, tools, sometimes just clean water. He never came back empty-handed. Yura began to understand that this was how he survived in this broken world. He moved constantly, searching, salvaging, helping anyone he found who still breathed. Why do you keep coming back? Yura asked him one evening as he cleaned and rewrapped her wing bindings. Minho did not look up from his work. Where else would I go? Anywhere. To the human evacuation zones, to find your sister. I am looking for her. His hands were steady as he adjusted the splints. Every place I search, every person I meet, I ask about her. No news yet, but I keep looking. He finally met her eyes. Besides, you are not ready to move. If I left now, you would die. Yura felt a strange warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with her inner flame. You could have left me that first day. I could have, Minho agreed. But I did not. So now you are stuck with me until you can walk properly. Despite everything, Yura found herself almost smiling. It felt wrong to smile in a world so full of death and loss. But Minho had a way of making the darkness seem less heavy. He would tell her stories while he worked. Tales of his life before the war. He had been a medical student studying to become a surgeon. His sister Bora was a musician, talented with instruments that Yura had never seen. Their parents had died when they were young, so they only had each other. Yura shared her own stories in return. She told him about Dravonian culture, about the soul flame ceremony that marked important moments in their lives. She told him about Taehyun, how they had bonded young and loved fiercely. She told him about little Nari, who loved to sing and had fire in her eyes even as a child. Do you think she is alive? Yura asked one night. Minho was quiet for a moment. I think that hope is worth holding on to until you know for certain. And even then, maybe especially then, you hold on to the memory. It was a good answer, an honest one. On the 15th day, everything changed. Yura was testing her legs, walking slowly around the shelter with Minho watching carefully, when they heard voices. Multiple voices speaking in Dravonian. Yura froze, her instincts screaming danger. 5 Dravonians appeared from behind a collapsed wall. They were thin, desperate-looking, their scales dull from malnutrition. 2 males and 3 females, all warriors once, now reduced to scavengers, their eyes fixed on the shelter, on the supplies Minho had carefully organized. Well, what do we have here? The leader, a male with a scar across his snout, spoke in their native tongue. A survivor, and a human pet. Yura straightened, ignoring the pain in her ribs. Leave this place. There is nothing for you here. The scarred male laughed, a harsh sound. Nothing? I see food, medicine, tools. I see everything we need. His eyes narrowed. And I see a traitor living with a human while her own people starve. I am no traitor. No. The male stepped closer. Then why do you shelter with one of them? Why do you let a human touch you, heal you, when our own kin lie dead in the streets? Minho moved to stand beside Yura, his hand near the small knife at his belt. He could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Yura put a hand on his arm, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the other Dravonians. This human saved my life when I was dying, Yura said clearly. He asked for nothing in return. He has shown me more honor than our own leaders did when they fled and left us to die. The scarred male spat on the ground. Honor from a human? They destroyed our world. They killed our families. And you defend them? One of the females stepped forward, her eyes hungry as she looked at their supplies. We did not come here to debate. We need those supplies. Move aside or we will take them by force. Yura felt her inner fire stir for the first time in weeks. It was weak, barely an ember, but it was there. She took a breath and let a small stream of flame escape her mouth, just enough to make her point. The other Dravonian stepped back, surprised. They had assumed she was too injured to fight. You will not touch these supplies, Yura said, her voice hard. Find your own. You would fight your own people for a human? The scarred male's voice was full of disbelief and rage. Yura thought of the past 2 weeks, of Minho's gentle hands healing her wounds, of his stories shared across the fire, of his refusal to see her as an enemy even when the whole universe said they were, of his hope for his sister, and the way he helped Yura hold on to hope for her daughter. I would fight anyone who tries to harm someone under my protection, she said. Human or Dravonian, that is true honor. The 2 groups stared at each other for a long moment. The scarred male's hand moved toward his weapon, a crude blade made from ship metal. Yura prepared to breathe fire again, though she knew it would exhaust her. Minho's grip tightened on his knife. Then one of the females, older than the others, put a hand on the leader's arm. Enough, there are other places to search, other supplies to find. She looked at Yura with something like sadness. But you have made your choice, sister. When others hear of this, you will be marked as an outcast. No Dravonian will shelter you or aid you. You will be alone. I'm already alone, Yura said quietly. We all are. The war took care of that. The group left, but not before the scarred male turned back one last time. You are dead to us, he said. Dead to our people. When they were gone, Yura's legs gave out. Minho caught her before she hit the ground, supporting her weight as he guided her back to her sleeping area. Her whole body shook, not from fear but from the effort of summoning even that small flame. What did they say? Minho asked as he helped her sit. Yura told him everything, translating the confrontation. When she finished, Minho was quiet for a long time. I am sorry, he finally said. I have cost you your people. No. Yura looked at him, this human who had become more than a stranger, more than an enemy. I made my choice, and I would make it again. That night, Minho added more supports to their shelter, making it more defensible. Yura watched him work, understanding that everything had changed. She could not return to her people. She was truly cast out now, bound to a path she had never expected to walk. But as she watched Minho prepare their evening meal, carefully dividing the rations so they both had enough, she realized something. She was not alone. She had lost everything in the war, her bondmate, her daughter, her world, her people. But she had found something unexpected in the ashes. She had found someone who refused to let her burn alone, even when the whole universe said he should. Tomorrow, Minho said, sitting across from her with his portion of food, we should talk about moving. Your legs are stronger. If we travel carefully, we might reach the human zones in a few weeks. There are information centers there, places where people post news about missing persons. You want to look for your sister? Yes, and maybe we can find news of your daughter too. Yura nodded slowly. A journey. A purpose. A reason to keep living beyond mere survival. Then we will go together, she said. Minho smiled. Together, he agreed. And in that moment, in a shelter made of wreckage, two beings from different worlds made a silent promise. They would face whatever came next side by side, two survivors in a broken universe refusing to give up on hope. The journey across the devastated continent was harder than either of them had expected. The land was scarred from orbital bombardments, forests burned to ash, rivers poisoned by chemicals. They walked through ghost towns where both humans and Dravonians had once lived together before the war. Now only silence remained, broken by the wind moving through empty buildings. Yura walked with difficulty, her wings bound tight against her back to prevent further injury. Minho had fashioned a walking stick for her from a piece of metal, and she leaned on it heavily when the pain became too much. Her pride hated the weakness, but her body demanded rest often. Minho never complained about their slow pace. He would simply stop when she needed to stop, sharing water and whatever food they had found. On the third day of travel, they encountered their first group of refugees. A mixed camp of humans and a few Dravonians all trying to survive together. The humans looked at Yura with fear and suspicion. The Dravonians looked at Minho the same way, but when Minho offered his medical skills, treating sick children and wounded adults regardless of species, the tension eased slightly. An old human woman approached Yura while Minho worked. You travel with him by choice? She asked in standard tongue. Yes, why? Yura watched Minho carefully clean a young boy's infected wound, speaking softly to calm the child's fears. Because he is a good person in a world that has forgotten what that means. The old woman nodded slowly. We need more people like that. Both species do. She handed Yura a small package of dried food. For your journey. And tell your friend thank you. It was a small kindness, but it meant everything. Yura realized that perhaps not everyone was consumed by hate. Perhaps there were others like them, trying to find a way forward through the darkness. They left the camp the next morning with a few more supplies and information about other refugee groups along their route. Minho had asked everyone about a girl named Bora, describing her carefully. No one had seen her. Yura had asked about Dravonian children evacuated from the warships. Some had been taken to human detention facilities, places where enemy civilians were held until the authorities decided what to do with them. Detention facilities, Yura repeated as they walked. Prisons. Not exactly prisons, Minho said, though his voice was uncertain. More like holding areas. The war just ended. Everyone is confused about what to do with former enemy civilians, especially children. Would your sister be in one of these places if she was found? Minho was quiet for a moment. Possibly. If she was picked up with Dravonian refugees, they might have sent her there for processing. He glanced at Yura. Your daughter too. If she was evacuated. A destination then. A place to search. It was more hope than Yura had felt in months. They traveled for another week, moving from one refugee group to another. Minho treated the sick and injured at each stop, and Yura used her knowledge of Dravonian culture to help calm frightened children who had lost their families. They made a good team, she realized. His medical knowledge and her understanding of loss created a bridge between scared people and the help they needed. At night, they would sit by small fires and talk. Minho taught her human songs, simple melodies that his sister used to play. Yura taught him basic words in Dravonian, the language of her people. He practiced the phrases carefully, his accent terrible but his effort genuine. Why do you want to learn? Yura asked one night. Because understanding begins with language, Minho said. And because if we find your daughter, I want to be able to speak to her, at least a little. The thoughtfulness of it made Yura's chest tight. He was planning for a future where they found both their missing family members. He held hope not just for his sister, but for Yura's child too. On the 15th day of their journey, they reached a larger settlement. It was built around an old military base that had been converted to a civilian center. Hundreds of people moved through the streets, human and Dravonian, trading goods and information. There was tension, but also a desperate need to survive that overcame prejudice. Minho found the information board quickly. It was a large wall covered with papers, photos, and handwritten notes. People looking for lost family members. People offering skills in trade for food. People trying to rebuild some kind of life from the ruins. They spent hours reading through the notices. Minho searched for any mention of Bora. Yura looked for news of Dravonian children, particularly any evacuated from military vessels. There were so many names, so many missing people. It was overwhelming. Here, Minho said suddenly, his finger on a notice. There is a woman here who works at a detention facility. She comes to the settlement every week to post updates about new arrivals. When does she come next? Tomorrow, according to this. They found a place to sleep that night in an abandoned building that others were using as temporary shelter. Yura could barely rest, her mind racing with possibilities. What if Nari was at this facility? What if she was not? What if she was hurt, scared, thinking her mother was dead? In the morning, they went to the meeting point listed on the notice. A human woman in military uniform was there, older than Minho, with tired eyes and a kind face. She was posting new papers on the board when Minho approached her. Excuse me, are you Heejin, from the detention facility? The woman turned, her hand instinctively moving toward the weapon at her hip when she saw Yura, but she relaxed when she recognized Minho. Minho? Her voice filled with surprise. I thought you were dead. Your whole unit, we heard the transport was destroyed. Most of them were. I survived. Heejin looked between Minho and Yura, clearly confused by their partnership. And you are traveling with a Dravonian? It is a long story, Minho said. Heejin, I'm looking for my sister. Bora. She was evacuated 8 months ago from the southern continent. Dark hair, about this tall, she played the Gaiagium. Have you seen her? Heejin's expression softened with sympathy. Minho, we have processed thousands of refugees. I cannot remember every face. But the facility where I work, we have records. I could check. Her eyes moved to Yura. What about you? Why are you traveling with him? Yura stepped forward slowly, her walking stick supporting her weight. I am looking for my daughter. She was 8 years old, evacuated from the warship Thunder's Wing. Her name is Nari. She would be 9 now. A Dravonian child that age, she would definitely be at a facility, Heejin said carefully. We have been taking care of the children, making sure they have food and shelter. But the facilities are restricted. I cannot just let anyone in, even for family reunions. There are protocols, security concerns. Please, Minho said, just check the records. Let us know if they are there. We have come so far. Heejin studied them both for a long moment. Yura saw something in her eyes, a recognition of their desperation, their hope. Finally, she nodded. I will check the records. But even if they are there, getting you access will be difficult. The facilities are under military control. Civilians are not allowed, and Dravonians definitely are not allowed. She paused. Unless you could do something for me first. Anything, Minho said immediately. There is a quarantined zone 3 days from here. We need medical supplies from a hospital there, but it is too dangerous. There are reports of disease, possibly biological weapons left from the war. No one wants to risk it. Heejin looked at Minho. But you were a combat medic. You know how to handle dangerous situations. If you could get those supplies, I could arrange for you to access the facility. Both of you. Minho glanced at Yura. She saw the question in his eyes. It was dangerous, possibly deadly. But it was also a chance to find their families. We will do it, Yura said firmly. Heejin nodded. Then we have a deal. I will give you the coordinates and a list of what we need. Be careful. People who have gone into that zone have not come back out. As they left Heejin and prepared for the new mission, Minho was quiet. Yura walked beside him, her wings aching from the day's movement. Are you afraid? She asked him. Yes, Minho admitted. But I am also hopeful. For the first time in months, we have a real lead. Both of us, that is worth the risk. Yura agreed. They had come through fire and loss, through pain and prejudice. They had found each other in the worst circumstances and built something unexpected. Trust, partnership, perhaps even friendship. Now they had a chance to find the people they had lost. Whatever waited in that quarantined zone, they would face it together, just as they had faced everything else. And maybe, just maybe, on the other side of this danger, their families were waiting. The quarantine zone looked like death itself had settled over the land. The buildings were covered in yellow warning markers, and the streets were empty, except for abandoned vehicles and scattered belongings. Minho and Yura stood at the edge of the zone, staring at the hospital in the distance. It rose above the other structures, a 5-story building with broken windows that looked like empty eyes. The supplies are on the 3rd floor, according to Hyejin's information. Minho said, checking his equipment one more time. He wore a makeshift protective suit cobbled together from materials they had gathered. It was not perfect, but it was better than nothing. We get in, get the medical supplies, and get out. Quick and clean. Yura nodded, though her heart pounded with fear she refused to show. Her Dravonian biology made her more resistant to disease than humans. But she was not invincible, and she was still healing from her injuries. Her wings remained bound, her body not yet at full strength. They entered the zone slowly, watching for any signs of movement. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the wind moving through broken windows. Bodies lay in the streets, covered by tarps that had been placed there weeks ago by the last evacuation teams. No one had come back to collect them. What kind of disease does this? Yura asked quietly. I do not know. Hijin said it spreads fast and kills faster. Respiratory symptoms, fever, organ failure within days. Minho's voice was tight with tension. It affects both humans and Dravonians, which is unusual. Most diseases are species-specific. They reached the hospital and found the entrance doors hanging open. Inside the lobby was a disaster. Medical equipment scattered everywhere. Papers covering the floor, dried blood on the walls. The smell was terrible, decay and chemicals mixed together. Minho led the way to the stairs, avoiding the elevator, which had no power. Each step echoed in the empty building. Yura kept her senses alert, listening for any sound that did not belong. Her people had excellent hearing, and right now that felt like both a blessing and a curse. She could hear things moving in the walls, small creatures that had made homes in the abandoned building. The third floor was worse than the lobby. This had been the emergency ward, and the signs of chaos were everywhere. Gurneys overturned, medical supplies dumped on the floor, rooms with doors torn off hinges. They found the supply room Hyejin had described, and Minho began gathering what they needed. Antibiotics, surgical tools, bandages, anything that had not been contaminated or destroyed. This is good, Minho said, packing supplies into his bag. More than I expected to find. If we can get this back, it will help a lot of people. Yura was about to agree when she heard it, a sound from deeper in the hospital. A voice, a child's voice, crying. She froze, her entire body going still. Minho, do you hear that? He stopped packing and listened. After a moment, his eyes widened. A child. How is anyone alive here? They followed the sound, moving carefully through the corridors. The crying grew louder, leading them to a sealed room at the end of the hallway. Through the small window in the door, they could see movement, multiple shapes huddled together. Minho looked through the window and gasped. Children. There are children in there. Multiple species, Yura pushed forward to look. Inside the room were at least 10 children, ranging from very young to maybe 12 years old. Half were human, half were Dravonian. They were thin, dirty, and terrified. When they saw faces at the window, they scrambled back against the far wall. We have to get them out, Yura said immediately. Wait. Minho checked the seal on the door, then looked at a nearby terminal that still had power. He accessed the medical records with shaking hands. This room was set up as an isolation ward. These children, they were exposed to the disease. They were quarantined here. How long ago? According to this, 3 weeks. The medical staff must have left them when the evacuation happened. Minho's voice was filled with horror and anger. They just left children here to die. Yura felt her inner fire stir, not from physical need, but from pure rage. What kind of people abandoned children? She moved to the door controls, trying to figure out how to open the seal. Yura, wait, Minho said. If we open that door, we risk exposure. If they are infected, then we get infected, Yura said flatly. I will not leave children to die in a locked room. I will not. She thought of Nari, her daughter, wondering if she was somewhere scared and alone too. She thought of every parent who had lost a child in this war. She thought of the Dravonian children she had commanded to evacuate, promising they would be safe. Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded and helped her with the door controls. The seal broke with a hiss of air and the door slid open. The children screamed and pressed harder against the wall. Yura stepped inside first, moving slowly. Her hands visible and empty, she spoke in Dravonian, keeping her voice soft and calm. We are here to help. We will not hurt you. I am Yura. This is Minho. We are going to get you out of here. One of the Dravonian children, a girl around 9 years old with dark green scales, stepped forward. You are dragon folk, she said in their language. Are you my mother? The question broke Yura's heart. No, little one. but I will help you find your mother. What is your name? Yoonji. Minho entered the room, speaking to the human children in their language. They were just as scared, just as desperate. One small boy, maybe 5 years old, clung to Minho's leg immediately, crying. It is okay, Minho said gently, picking up the child. We are here now. No one will hurt you. They spent the next hour carefully examining each child. Remarkably, most of them showed no signs of the disease. They were malnourished and dehydrated, but not infected. A few had mild symptoms, fever and coughing, but nothing severe yet. How are they not sick? Yura asked. Minho was checking one of the human girls, listening to her breathing. I do not know. Maybe they have some natural immunity. Maybe they were never actually exposed. Or maybe the disease has already run its course through them. He looked at Yura. But we cannot leave them here. Even if they are infected, leaving them is not an option. Agreed. We take them all. Getting the children out of the hospital was harder than getting in. They were weak, some could barely walk. Minho and Yura took turns carrying the smallest ones. The Dravonian girl Yoonji stayed close to Yura, holding her hand tightly. She reminded Yura so much of Nari that it hurt to look at her. They were halfway across the zone when Yura felt it. A wave of dizziness followed by pain in her chest. Not from her injuries, but from something else. Something burning inside her. She stumbled, catching herself against a wall. Yura? Minho was at her side immediately, his hand on her shoulder. What is wrong? I do not know. I feel strange. One of the older human boys, maybe 12, spoke up. The disease. It starts like that. My mother felt dizzy before she got sick. Minho's face went pale behind his protective mask. He quickly checked Yura's vitals, his hands professional despite his obvious fear. Your temperature is rising. Breathing is slightly labored. I will be fine, Yura said, forcing herself to stand straight. We need to get the children out first. Yura, I will be fine, she repeated firmly. I am Dravonian. We are strong, but these children need help now. They kept moving, but Yura could feel the illness spreading through her body like poison. By the time they reached the edge of the quarantine zone, she was struggling to breathe. Her vision blurred at the edges. The fire inside her, weak as it had been since her injuries, now felt like it was burning her from the inside out. Hijin was waiting at the extraction point with a medical team. She took one look at the children and immediately began organizing their care. Then she saw Yura, saw the way she was swaying on her feet. She needs medical attention now, Minho said urgently. She is infected. We have a field hospital, Hyejin said. Bring her. But Yura's legs gave out before they could move. She collapsed, her body finally giving up after pushing too hard for too long. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Minho's face, filled with fear and determination. The last thing she heard was his voice. Stay with me, Yura, please, do not leave me alone. She wanted to answer, wanted to tell him she was sorry for being weak, for getting sick, for not being strong enough. But the darkness was too heavy, pulling her down into depths where even her inner fire could not reach. Somewhere far away, she thought she heard a child crying. Yoonji, maybe? Or Nari, or both. Then there was nothing but the fire burning inside her, consuming everything she was, and all she could do was burn. Yura woke to whiteness, white walls, white lights, white sheets covering her body. For a moment she thought she had died, that this was some afterlife her people had never told her about. Then the pain came rushing back and she knew she was still alive. Dead people did not hurt this much. She tried to move and found her body weak, weaker than it had been even right after the crash. Her wings felt heavy, her chest tight, but she was breathing. She was alive. You are awake. Minho's voice came from beside her bed. He looked terrible, his eyes red from lack of sleep, his face pale with exhaustion. But his smile was genuine, full of relief. You have been unconscious for 4 days. We thought we lost you several times. Yura's throat was too dry to speak. Minho helped her drink water, supporting her head gently. When she could finally form words, she asked, The children? Safe, all of them. Hyunji asks about you every day. Minho set down the water cup and took her hand. His touch was warm, real, grounding. You saved them, Yura. All of them would have died in that hospital if you had not insisted we go in. Are they sick? A few showed symptoms, but we caught it early. Hyejin's medical team has been treating them. They will all survive. He paused, his grip on her hand tightening. You almost did not. The disease hit you harder than anyone expected. Your Dravonian biology fought it, But it was fighting your injuries, too. Your body was trying to heal too many things at once. Yura closed her eyes, remembering the burning. I felt like I was on fire. Like my inner flame was trying to burn the sickness away. That is probably what saved you. Your people's natural fire resistance had fought the fever, but it nearly killed you in the process. Minho's voice cracked slightly. I stayed with you every moment. I refused to let you burn alone. She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him. This human who had saved her life not once but twice. Who had traveled with her, protected her, gave her hope when she had none. Who had risked infection to help children that were not his own. Who sat by her bedside for 4 days, refusing to leave. Thank you, she whispered. Always, he said simply. Over the next week, Yura's strength slowly returned. Minho rarely left her side, only stepping away when Hyejin or other medical staff needed to examine her. The children visited too, especially Yunji, who would sit beside Yura's bed and tell her stories or sing Dravonian songs. It reminded Yura painfully of Nari, but it also gave her hope. On the 8th day, Hyejin came to visit with news. She looked between Minho and Yura, her expression complicated. I checked the records at the detention facility as I promised, she said. I have found some information about both your families. Minho stood up immediately. Bora, did you find her? There's a girl in the facility who matches her description. Dark hair, about 15 years old now. Found with a group of Dravonian refugees 8 months ago. She plays music. Hyejin pulled out a photo and handed it to Minho. Is this her? Minho's hands shook as he looked at the picture. His eyes filled with tears. Yes, that is Bora. That is my sister. He looked up at Hyejin. Is she okay? Can I see her? She is physically healthy, but according to the records, she has not spoken since she arrived. Some kind of trauma response. The staff has been taking care of her, but she needs her family. Hyejin turned to Yura. And I found something about your daughter, too. Yura's heart stopped. Nari? There is a Dravonian child at the facility, 9 years old, evacuated from the warship Thunder's Wing. Her name matches. Hyejin showed Yura another photo. A small girl with silver scales and bright eyes sitting alone in a room drawing pictures. Yura took the photo with trembling hands. Her daughter. Her baby. Alive. After so many months of not knowing, of fearing the worst, here was proof that Nari lived. The tears came without permission, streaming down her face. She is alive, Yura breathed. My daughter is alive. Minho put his arm around Yura's shoulders, his own tears falling. They held each other, 2 parents who had found their children against all odds, in a universe that had tried to take everything from them. Hyejin gave them a moment before continuing. There is something else. The records show that your sister Minho was found with a group of Dravonian children. She was protecting them, keeping them safe. That is why she was sent to the facility. They thought she might be Dravonian herself at first. Minho looked up, surprised. Bora saved Dravonian children? According to the reports, she found them during an evacuation that went wrong. She stayed with them, made sure they got food and water, protected them from people who wanted to hurt them. She did not speak, but she never left them. Hyejin smiled slightly. Your sister is very brave. Yura felt something warm bloom in her chest. Minho's sister had saved Dravonian children, just like Minho had saved her. Perhaps kindness ran in their family like fire ran in hers, but Hyejin's expression grew serious. However, there is a complication. The facility is still under strict military control. Even with my help, getting both of you inside will be difficult. Especially you, Yura. Dravonians are not allowed in the facility for security reasons. Then what do we do? Minho asked. I have been thinking about this. Hyejin sat down, looking tired but determined. What happened in the quarantine zone, the way you saved those children, it has changed some minds. People are talking about it. About a human and a Dravonian working together, risking their lives for children of both species. It is a powerful story. We did not do it for a story, Yura said. I know, but stories matter. They change how people think. Hyejin leaned forward. If I can get approval from the facility commander, if I can convince her that you two represent something important, a new way forward, she might allow a visit. Both of you together. When will you know? Minho asked. Give me a few days. In the meantime, Yura needs to finish recovering. Those few days were the longest of Yura's life. She pushed herself to heal faster, forcing her body to cooperate. She practiced walking without the stick. exercising her wings carefully under Minho's supervision. The children from the hospital came to visit often, bringing smiles and hope with them. Yoonji especially stayed close, and Yura found herself caring for the girl like she was her own. "Do you have parents, Yoonji?" Yura asked her one afternoon. The girl shook her head sadly. "They died in the war. I only have my brother now, but we got separated." "We will find him," Yura promised. "When this is all over, we will find your brother." On the 5th day, Hyejin returned with news. The facility commander agreed. "You can both visit tomorrow. But there are conditions. You will be escorted at all times. You cannot remove anything from the facility, and this is only one visit, to confirm identities and make sure the children are really yours." "We understand," Minho said. "Thank you, Hyejin, for everything." That night, Yura could not sleep. Tomorrow she would see Nari again. Tomorrow she would hold her daughter after so many months of separation and fear. She kept touching the photo Hyejin had given her, as if to confirm it was real. Minho sat beside her in the darkness, equally unable to rest. "Are you nervous?" he asked. Terrified, Yura admitted. "What if she does not remember me? What if she hates me for losing her? She will remember, and she will be so happy to see you." Minho was quiet for a moment. "I am scared too. About Bora, about what the war did to her, about whether I can help her heal." Yura reached over and took his hand. "We will help each other, as we have from the beginning. You will not face this alone, Minho, I promise you that." He squeezed her hand. "Neither will you. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together." Morning came with a bright sun that felt like a blessing. Hyejin arrived with a military transport and 2 guards. The journey to the detention facility took 3 hours. Yura watched the landscape pass, seeing the slow signs of rebuilding. People of both species working together in some places, separate in others. The war was over, but the healing had barely begun. The facility was larger than Yura expected, a compound of buildings surrounded by fences. Not a prison, but not freedom either. They were processed at the entrance, searched for weapons, given visitor badges. The guards watched Yura with suspicion and fear, hands near their weapons. But Hyejin's presence kept them calm. They were taken to a meeting room with 2 doors. Hyejin explained that the children would be brought in separately, one to each door. Yura would meet Nari through one door. Minho would meet Bora through the other. "I will be right here if you need anything," Hyejin said. Then she stepped back, giving them space. Yura's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. The door opened and a small figure entered. Silver scales, bright eyes thin from not enough food but alive, so alive. Nari stopped when she saw Yura, her eyes going wide. "Mama!" The word was barely a whisper. "My flame," Yura breathed, using the old endearment. "My little flame." Nari ran across the room and threw herself into Yura's arms. They collapsed together, holding each other, crying. Yura wrapped her wings around her daughter, shielding her from the world as she had always done. She breathed in the scent of her child, felt the warmth of her small body, and knew that everything she had suffered was worth it for this moment. Across the room she heard Minho's voice breaking with emotion. "Bora, it is me. It is your brother. I found you." Yura looked over and saw Minho holding his sister, a thin girl who clung to him like he was the only solid thing in the world. Bora did not speak, but tears ran down her face as she buried her head in Minho's shoulder. Hyejin wiped her own eyes, smiling through tears. "I will give you time," she said quietly, and left the room. The 4 of them stayed like that for a long time. 2 humans and 2 Drivonians, broken families made whole again. Outside, the world was still divided, still angry, still healing from war. But in this room there was only love and relief and hope. Eventually Nari pulled back enough to look up at Yura. "I thought you were dead, Mama. They said all the warriors died. I almost did, little flame. But a very good person saved me, a human named Minho." Yura gestured to where Minho sat with his sister. "And he has been helping me find you all this time." Nari looked at Minho with wonder. "A human saved you?" "Yes, and he became my friend. My family in a way." Yura smiled at Minho, who smiled back. They spent hours together, all 4 of them, sharing stories of what had happened since they were separated. Bora still did not speak, but she listened intently, especially when Minho told her about meeting Yura, about their journey together. When he told her how Bora had saved Drivonian children, Yura saw pride in the girl's eyes. Finally, Hyejin returned. "I am sorry, but visiting time is over. But I have more good news. Because of what you did in the quarantine zone, Because of this story, the facility commander has agreed to release both children into your custody. It will take a few days to process the paperwork, but they will be free. Yura felt her inner fire surge with joy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Minho stood, helping Bora to her feet. We will come back for you, he promised his sister. Just a few more days and then we will never be apart again. Nari hugged Yura one more time. Will you really come back? I swear it on my fire, little flame. I will come back for you, and this time I will never let you go. 3 days later, they returned to the facility. The paperwork was completed, the custody arrangements finalized. Yura walked out of the compound with Nari's hand in hers, Minho with his arm around Bora. Behind them, Yunji and several other children from the hospital followed. Hyejin had arranged for all of them to be released together. A small family formed from the broken pieces of war. They found shelter in a new settlement that welcomed both species. It was not perfect. There was still tension, still prejudice, still fear. But there were also people trying to build something better. Trying to prove that cooperation was possible. That hope could grow even in ashes. Minho and Yura set up a clinic together, treating anyone who needed help regardless of species. Bora slowly began to speak again, her voice returning with time and love and safety. She played music for the children, beautiful melodies that made everyone stop and listen. Nari attended school with human and Dravonian children, learning that not all differences meant division. Yunji found her brother in the records, and they arranged a reunion that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Other families were reunited through their clinic, their efforts making ripples that spread wider than they ever imagined. 6 months after they had first met in the wreckage of a crashed ship, Yura and Minho stood on a cliff overlooking their settlement. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of fire and hope. Yura's wings had healed enough to open fully now, casting shadows on the ground. I lost everything in the fire of war, Yura said quietly. Minho stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. But you did not burn alone. Yura looked at him, this human who had saved her life, who had traveled with her through darkness, who had helped her find her daughter, who had become more than a friend. He was family now, chosen family forged in the fires of shared pain and hope. No, she agreed, and I never will again. Below them, children played together, human and Dravonian, their laughter rising on the wind. Nari and Bora sat together, one playing music while the other sang. It was a small thing, a fragile piece in a universe still divided by war, but it was real. It was theirs, and it was worth every moment of pain they had endured to reach it. Yura spread her wings, testing them in the wind. They held strong, not perfect, not what they once were, but functional. Enough to fly. Enough to soar. Do you think we made a difference? Minho asked. Yes, Yura said with certainty. We showed that enemies can become family. That different species can build something together. That hope is stronger than hate. She turned to look at him. We survived the fire, Minho, and now we help others do the same. He smiled, that genuine smile she had come to treasure. Together, always together, she agreed. And as the sun set on a world still healing from war, two beings from different species stood side by side, proof that even the deepest divides could be crossed with compassion, that even the worst pain could be transformed into hope, and that no one had to burn alone in the darkness as long as someone was willing to stand beside them in the flames.